Okay. Oh, so okay, we can start. Good morning, everyone. If someone is still coming, we're just going to check if there are more people coming into the class. No, I think we're all set. So, like I said before, today we're going to have the first presentations. I have again a video of the day. You might have seen this in the previous slides. I always have a short video. Unfortunately, through the Zoom online system, it's not very suitable to show those videos. So that's why I will let you watch the video by yourself. This is simply a short video about a journal where you can submit your work, and you get a little bit an insight how a scientific journal works, and what kind of articles they're publishing and how their peer review works. So if you're interested in that, you might watch this YouTube video maybe after the class today. So today's objective is really only to get you all, give you a feedback on your project presentations. Like we discussed during the week, today the intention is simply to present your project, to see what you're going to work on, to give you feedback, also from your classmates. If someone has a comment or a discussion point or would like to give a feedback, I suggest we just type it into the Zoom group chat, and then after the presentation, we go over the questions, we give the feedback, and we try to help each other to make the project more convincing, more sustainable, and to point out things that can be looked at in more detail. So in short, I would like you to present maybe in 15 minutes your project and then have a 5-minute discussion. Someone wanted to ask a question? No, okay. So so by the introduction, I think the 5 W's, like we discussed during the week, like what, when, where, who, I would like maybe point out the system boundary, point out, and afterwards go into the methods that you would like to use for your project, and maybe outline the expected results. Try to keep track of the time. Try to stick to 15 minutes because that's also the time you will have for the final presentation. And we simply have to stick to a tight timeline because we should have 6 projects, maybe we're even going to have 7. And if it, yeah, of course, if everybody takes more time, then it just takes a bit long. Maybe at the final presentation, we might expand it to 20 minutes. We'll see how it goes today, and then adjust the time for the final presentations for the according to how it went today. So if there are any questions, please feel free to ask now. Today's presentations will not be graded. It's really only to get you going, to give you feedback on your presentations. But if you have questions, please feel free to ask now. Otherwise, we would just start with the first project. Okay, so since no one has questions, I would maybe just like to start. Maybe we're just going to start in alphabetic order. One moment, I have to open the students list. And so I'm going to go into the list of students, and then just start in alphabetic order. And the first student is Andres Felipe Laverde. Andres, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. My group is going to present now.
Yes, okay. Did you choose one person to present, or are you going to present it together?
One person.
One person, okay. So maybe...
No, I mean, no, I'm not really sure.
I want to share the screen, but I think you should stop
Yeah.
your
Yes,
screen first.
I'm going to
You
stop
actually
right away.
make
I
things
just have to get my computer to do what I want the computer to do. Stop sharing. And then we should be able. Can you share your screen now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Very good.
Okay, and I'm gonna be doing the talking Dr. Finger. Do you just want me to start whenever?
Yes, I think we just start now. So it's
Okay.
about 7 minutes past 10. So you have about 15 minutes and then
Sounds
we'll
great.
just go over, give you feedback.
Okay, so our group is going to put together a report on the environmental impact assessments of oil palm production in the state of Pará in Brazil. It's in the north central region of Brazil. So for our introduction, across the world, we know that there's an increasing demand for biodiesel as governments try to convert to more environmentally friendly fuel productions. And Brazil is making an effort to expand its palm oil production in the biodiesel realm. In the Amazon region, there are huge areas that are suitable for palm oil production. Something about palm oil that we found was interesting was that it only grows between the tropical latitudes of 10 degrees north and 10 degrees south. So it's a thin strip across the world that is appropriate for palm oil development. And so a couple of the important policies that we were going to look more into in the social development field is how they're creating jobs in Brazil and in the Amazonian region, but also how environmental protection, it's kind of counterintuitive, but because the palm oil can only be produced in that those in between those latitudes, they are putting forward environmental acts to protect the rest of the Amazon that's outside of those latitudes. So that's where we're going to look more into that. Gladys, if you can go to the next slide, please. So to continue with what our W's are going to be, so it's going to be the analysis of the palm oil production in Brazil, and for the when we think we're going to look at the last 20 years, and for who we're going to look at various companies in the Amazonia region who've been producing palm oil. So here's a list of all the major players in the commercial side. And so, yeah, moving on. So our objective will be to evaluate the environmental impacts within the different spheres of the oil palm plantations and processing plants in the state of Pará, situated in northeastern Brazil. It's if you can see the map of South America on the right, Pará is the larger state that's highlighted in red. You can see a little pull-out picture and a zoom in of all the major towns with where the oil palm mills are located. So it'll be interesting to see how that distribution is and what areas are affected around those mills, and what kind of policies and things of that nature to protect and what is affected in those areas. So some of the methods that we thought would be helpful to us were to be going through old scientific papers. We're really going to try and find company reports, but as we've done some research into this, you know, we kind of came to the realization that this is one of those industries where not every company might have been transparent over the last 20 years. And so I think that will be interesting as we keep going through our project to see how each of these companies have done their own EIAs and official guides, and kind of see where there's commonalities, and then wherever there's big differences in how some of these companies operate. It'll be interesting. And then national regulations in the country, of course, and how Brazil is monitoring the development of the palm oil industry. Okay. And so to talk about the distribution of tasks, we wanted to just show our team here. I think we have a pretty good diverse group. Gladys with a background in geological engineering, Andreas with a geologic background, Gunlog with fisheries, Nicole with geological engineering, Silvana was an architect, and I've done a lot of work in the environmental management field. So it's a good group that I think really has a lot of different input into the EIA. So it's exciting to have a pretty multidisciplinary team together here. Okay, so Gladys with the atmosphere, we're gonna talk about the total greenhouse gas emissions, everything, you know, from the production, extraction and transportation parts, and how that affects the atmosphere, climate variability, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change stated that the warning of the climate system is evident and largely caused by increase of CO2 from anthropogenic sources. And so as industry gets as Brazilian agriculture gets more intensive, it's going to directly impact climate change and resulting in biophysical effects. There's some projections that it'll be pretty intense over the central part of Brazil, and it could be in a rising number of days with temperatures above 34 Celsius, and warmer and drier days. So how that might affect the industry. And then precipitation is expected to increase over western Amazon and South Brazil, but it decrease over eastern and northeast, southeast. So there's a lot of impact into the atmosphere, I think, from the type of production that palm oil has. So moving on to the hydrosphere. They transport this material up and down the rivers. So that in and of itself, the transportation's a little bit different, I think, than historic transport of goods. They're using the water in the actual plantations and processing mills. So how sustainable is that? And are they being environmentally responsible when they're using that water? And to transport, is it safe? Sources of water pollution, fertilizers, herbicides, and then the effluent from the palm oil mills, where does that go? Hopefully not directly into the Amazon River. Wastewater, where are they treating it? How are they reusing it? So with the lithosphere, soil erosion reduces oil palm production, not only by decreasing soil fertility and organic matter, but also by reducing soil water infiltration, soil water content, and soil water holding capacity. And therefore that causes less available soil water content overall. And with soil erosion, of course, comes poor like water storage, and therefore nutrient deficiencies in the lithosphere. Going to take a closer look, and this is Gunlog's section. She's going to take a closer look at how the preparation and cultivation affects this, where in the Amazon deforestation has occurred, and what kind of changes in land use there have been. Also, side effects of soil acidification due to fertilizers. This will be a pretty interesting topic, I believe, too, because it's not just what is done at surface level, but then how the forest reacts, or the rainforest reacts to these stresses, and how long it takes to come back. For the biosphere, we plan on researching changes in land cover, land use, the impacts of deforestation and monoculture on the ecosystem, as well as the effects of fertilizers and pesticides. Unfortunately, with this type of monoculture production, biodiversity loss and unbalanced ecosystems is a big concern. Methods to lower impact in these areas and keeping monoculture practices small. They also use intercropping methods and are trying to reuse previously deforested land and convert it to a more impactful land use. So, for example, turning farmland into palm plantation. So that'll be an interesting area to study as well. Moving on to the Anthroposphere. This, of course, includes all the parts of the environment that have been affected by, modified by humans and used by our activities. So when we talk about the agriculture itself, the actual palm oil production, the transporting of the goods, and the buildings that people live in, things of that nature, when they're actually working. So it'll take a deeper look at the carbon footprint of new plantations, deforestation, reduction of indigenous lands, the population increase, which also is an employment increase, and then leading to construction of new roads to continue exporting. And since we have 6 people in our group, we've got the 5 spheres covered. And I also wanted to look at the socioeconomics of this, because it's pretty interesting in my mind. When I think of the Amazon and palm oil production, I really didn't realize that it was a positive for a lot of people in Brazil who looked at this as a great opportunity for work. So I was going to talk about local land rights. There's a difference between when people actually lease the land, rent the land, or own the land, and what type of industries they're allowed to do on it. So there's been fights over people properly using the land and how they're allowed to. There's family farmers, which is the more sustainable group here, obviously, versus commercial enterprises. There's a large group of commercial Japanese companies that will attempt to buy big swaths of land and to have these big production companies going, and the family farmers are getting pushed out, and so there's some pushback from local farmers. But then we've talked about the employment generation factor. So the thing about that is really only large production companies genuinely have large employment generation. So it's tough to tell people, we're only going to allow family farmers to grow when so many people who are looking for work will only be employed by these bigger companies. So there's a lot of back and forth there. The trade unions and companies, they actually improved on trade or commercial practices through specific employment terms and conditions that they negotiate fairly annually within municipal and regional rural worker unions. And people have been quoted as saying it's an important step to formalizing employment in the Amazon, which historically has been largely informal and highly insecure. So it's making the business more official, you know, so that's a positive to a lot of people in the area. They feel better about the work that they're doing. And I added this because I just found it was interesting that the government in 2005 signed the National Pact to Eradicate Slave Labor, and in the Amazon there was a large amount of that. Come to find, 27% of the companies that were found to have slave labor were in the PAULA region, and in 2013 there was actually a mayor of a city who was found guilty of having slaves working on his palm oil plant, and he was an outgrower of the Agro Palma company. So this company had hired out a individual who had a lot of land to produce palm oil, and the company had to separate themselves from him. So it's just kind of a messy situation over there sometimes. And then it actually has led to an increasing quality of environmental management, which is great, just because it's becoming more of a global topic, and these companies are actually having to be responsible for the environmental quality of the areas they leave behind. And Agro Palma admits that before they had started to pay more attention to environmental management, that 45% of their plantations had involved deforestation. So the industry is coming a long way. And for our last slide, our expected results, we're gonna do small areas of monoculture, look at the intercropping methods for environmental and economic reasons, monitor correct use of lands, new plantations only permitted in previously deforested lands, and then the increased emissions and infrastructure development, how the industry is progressing, and if they're truly more responsible than they were 20 years ago, or if it's just the way that the companies are construing numbers to make themselves seem more environmentally friendly. So it should be an interesting EIA, we believe. And our references and teammates, do y'all have anything to add?
Okay, thank you very much. I think I'm going to give you a virtual applause. I think we can always applaud the presenters with this little virtual applauding. So any questions, any comments from the audience? Anyone can now ask questions, or just turn on your microphone and ask your questions. Otherwise, if there are too many asking at the same time, just type in your question into the Zoom chat. I don't see any questions in the chat, nor does anyone open the microphone. So I'm going to yep.
But if I can,
of course.
Why did you choose Brazil? Is it just because of the Amazon, or because most of it is made in Indonesia, right?
We chose Brazil because it's, a bigger nation, and I think the Amazon is really one of those things that a lot of people are more aware of than just the production in Malaysia. And it's just, the Amazon is the most famous jungle in the world, and it's interesting that we even have companies that operate there and that are allowed to clear cut and deforest such a prized rainforest I think it just spoke to us more, and we wanted to see how they were being environmental stewards here.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. Any further questions? Okay, I would like to give you a feedback to your presentation. First of all, thank you very much. I think it's a very valuable and a very important topic. I think we didn't have this in class before, so I'm very happy that you chose this topic. My first question is a little bit the topic. I think there are two ways of doing this. Either you look at the environmental impact assessment of the entire policy for Brazil, which would expand your environmental impact assessment pretty much, because you're going to look at the whole country and look at more what does the policy of promoting palm oil production in Brazil, what are the environmental impacts of this policy? Or you could focus on one specific case study of a company. This could be a virtual company that you just imagine yourself, or you could select a company that where you get enough information, a real life company, where you could just gather their information and then write an environmental impact statement about their production. So that is something I really encourage you. My advice would be that you select one specific case study, simply because it's easier to limit yourself to one specific case study than to look at the whole country, which would, because you have two weeks left, and time is limited, and it would be very difficult for you to get to come up with a coherent report for whole Brazil. I think if you focus on one specific case study, you might get a more valuable report at the end that is more convincing. The second comment I have is to clearly state your system boundaries. You might look only at the production of the plant. You might look at a plant that doesn't exist yet, where they have to go in and use up some of the land and you know, convert, maybe even deforest some of the rainforests, which would of course have a huge environmental impact, and then also look at the restoration of the forest. Maybe after 50 years, they even would have a plan to restore the original forest. So there's a bit up to you to decide what is included. Also, the transport of the palm oil outside, the refining of the oil, the shipment towards other countries. So here it's really a bit up to you to decide where do you want to lay your focus, only on the production or on the entire process of producing the palm oil up until transporting it towards the consumer countries, which are probably Europe or North America. So I think the system boundary is important that you define this. And then what I would find very interesting, if you also look at the certifications of organic palm oil production, maybe you can find, you know, if you go buy certain cosmetic products, sometimes you can see on them that it's certified to be of organic production and that it's produced in a sustainable way. And maybe you could address this within your case study if you were to focus on one specific company. By simply looking into it, is it possible to produce a palm oil in a sustainable way where you adhere to certain social and environmental and aspects that are making this more sustainable? Those are my three main points. I don't know if you have a question to those points or.
No, thank you for the feedback. I don't, if someone in my group has a question, but I know that we needed that feedback because we anticipated we'd bit off probably a little more we can chew with the full industry. So we were curious in what manner would be best to narrow it down. And I think that really helps us kind of focus our thoughts here.
Yeah. So yeah, I think just to come back to this, I think one way would be to find a company that is maybe particularly sustainable or promotes its product as being very sustainable, and then you can assess it in a bit a critical way if it is really truly sustainable, or come up with a hypothetical company that where you would like to produce it as sustainable as possible, and then write about the potential of sustainable palm oil production in Brazil. I would see it a bit like this. I don't know, I would like to ask the audience, anyone has a comment or a feedback to the first presentation?
This is actually sort of like maybe a question, but something that I find interesting, which could be looked into, is how the different sort of consumer countries see palm oil, because we're here in Finland, we have Neste, which is quite big producer of biodiesel. And in Finland, we have legislation which says that the palm oil, which is made from the husk and not the kernels, is waste from this industry. So that in that way, they can say that they make their biofuel solely from waste. And if I remember correctly, we are the only Nordic country who defines the husk oil as waste. And there, so you can then with your product, you can lower your sort of carbon footprint. And of course, this is debated. So this is not fact. I can see if I can find some of the articles that I've read and put them in the chat. But just like it just shows how a controversial topic this is.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. If further questions come up, we can maybe discuss it afterwards, or you might contact each other. And after class, we'll have to move on to the next presentation. If I just follow the list alphabetically, then we would have Arkaitis Dononzo. Are you here?
Yeah, good morning.
Do you have one presenter, or?
Yeah, I'll be the main presenter,
okay.
But then all of us will say something about our own topic.
Okay, very good. Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to the next presentation.
So, well, good morning to everyone. And well, our group is going to present to you our project proposal for an environmental impact assessment of a geothermal power plant in the Reykjavik Peninsula. And well, first, start mentioning that with a geologist and a drilling engineer as part of our team, and well, the rest of us like quite interested into geothermal energy. After discussing some other areas of interest and topics, we chose to go for an EIA of geothermal power plant proposal. So, as you may know, like here in Iceland, there are plenty of big and small projects being addressed already, and we have decided to choose one that may have an outlining impact in the surrounding population. So only in the Reykjavik Peninsula, as we can see in the picture, there are 7 projects in like what they call third phase, meaning that the proposal has been through some steps already. However, like an assessment of its impact has not been researched yet for any of the cases, and just an outline of what the impact could be. So we thought that it could be like a very good idea to work on those. And apart from that one, we have chosen this area to work in it because the location itself, it's very interesting. All the locations are pretty close of Reykjavik, that, as you know, is the biggest city here. And that means that that could present a big challenge for the power plant. And also it's quite close to the Keflavík International Airport, which means that it's another challenge to tackle, basically, because it's a very sensitive point. And well, we have to be very careful not to give any problem into the airline system. And well, also like the location has a rocky landscape. It's very windy, and it's prone to have a big seismic activity. So that, well, can be one of the biggest drawbacks of building the power plant in this location. But still, we want to check what the impact would be and if it would be a feasible idea to work on it. And well, all these elements have created an environment for these proposals to go through. And well, most of the proposals are for power plants of around 100 megawatts. And they have been, I think all of them are by HS Orca. And well, their main idea would be to produce electricity, but well, of course, as you know, they can just move to thermal generation. And well, once we have this cleared, we have divided the work into different sections following the main impact points and well, our personal interests. So can you go to the next slide, please? So as you can see here in the list, we have all of our members, and we are going to like tackle, for example, how the drilling fluids may affect the environment, and so the water quality issues that this may present, the socioeconomic impacts in the area, the influence of the power plant on the fauna and flora, the induced seismic activity that may be produced through drilling, and then the operation process, and the impact on the air quality in the region, and well, finally, the noise pollution that the power plant would create. And well, now each of our team members will give a short input on each of these areas.
The first step of building any power plant is drilling wells, and now I'm going to talk about how drilling fluids affect the environment. And there are two main problems, in my opinion. The first one is during drilling, there are always a lot of zones of losses where fluid gets inside the rocks, which leads to the pollution of soil and the groundwater resources. As you can see it on the figure, that drilling fluid gets inside the cracks and of the layer. And it's important to mention that drilling mud usually contains a lot of chemicals. The most popular one is polymer, but usually there are like different types of chemicals, and they're all dangerous to the environment. The losses in the well can be up to the 50 liters per second in Reykjavik area, according to the literature. And the second big problem is about drilling fluid disposal, because it may significantly affect the environment on the surface. As I mentioned before, there's a big amount of chemicals which can easily pollute and destroy the landscape and vegetation. And I will try to represent more facts during our next report.
The socioeconomic issues are tied into and related to a lot of the other points that we address here, but specifically some items of consideration are its impact on tourism, which is quite popular in the area, particularly aesthetics, as well as impacts on traffic and related issues during construction period. Additionally, labor opportunities, both direct and potentially indirect, that may arise from the power plant. The manner in which the energy is then used could be a point of exploration and contention, to any tax revenue or other sorts of revenue that come from it, as well as health and life quality impacts for the residents and other people in the area.
Vegetation and wildlife. In the Reykjavik Peninsula, there is not like the most of vegetation, but there is moss on over the most of the lava fields, which is considered like really valuable for this like delicate ecosystem, and it takes a long time to regrow. So like building power plants on these locations is considered like you would have to replace a lot of this moss and these low volumes of vegetations, which has like greater effect on the whole system if it's like it's not as vegetatively covered as other areas. And we're going to look at like the destruction of vegetation during the construction period, impact of of operations on vegetation. For example, in Hydrosphere, the power plant, there was a period where the hydrogen sulfide was like killing off moss in certain areas. So these kinds of pollutants during operations can affect the surrounding area. And for example, for birds, like inhabits like impacts on their like breeding grounds and if they're nesting in the area, and especially hazardous one if there are gases accumulating in low places in the landscape. It could be like toxic for the animals in the area that maybe settle in the low points of the landscape. Yeah.
And seismicity is usually caused by tectonically active zones. It typically occurs naturally, but it can also be induced by human activity, by the development of geothermal fields through the production and injection operation. And although it is not considered to be a hazard for the geothermal power plant or the surrounding communities, those projects have previously caused earthquakes of magnitude 3. So we need to take several things into account, such as the seismicity of the area, geolocation of the natural earthquakes. Also, we should monitor the seismic activity during the drilling operation. And we need to take also into account the volume of water injected versus the microseismic that have been generated. And by all of this, we can expertise if the seismic activity is caused by a pre-existing fault or a new one that have been generated during the drilling process.
Furthermore, we're going to be looking at the air quality associated with this geothermal project, both during construction and the operation period, the life cycle of this plant project. And as we know, some of the major emissions from geothermal plants would be carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide. And I'm going to be looking at doing some plume modeling on the emissions of these chemicals and particulates into the air, study historical wind patterns, location of population centers, and see how what we might be able to expect from this project. Furthermore, we'll be looking at the regulatory compliance of Icelandic laws regarding emissions from geothermal plants, especially hydrogen sulfide, and what needs to be done to address those, like capture and sequestration and minimization. And we'll be looking at the impact of these emissions, greenhouse gases, on the local residents and natural environment, as well as the impact to the globe in general.
Well, finally, in terms of noise pollution, we will take into account how the three main phases of the construction, that would be the well drilling and testing, the construction, the operation, the different noise pollution that will be created. Normally during operation, like it is very minimal, but the other two phases may create a huge impact. And well, for so, in order to comply with all the regulations, we may need to invest something in like noise mitigation and reduction by some noise cancelling material, and we need to check which other consequences in the surrounding area this noise may have, as it may be directly connected also to some other areas of research as fauna. For our main methodology, we're going to work on different papers and articles written about geothermal in general, and some research papers that have already been worked of the area. However, in addition to that, we would also like to contact and discuss the construction of the power plant with different stakeholders in order to know their own opinion and their main worries, so that we can know where to put our focus on when working on the project. And well, can you go to the last slide, sir? And for our expected results, where our main idea is to, well, decrease the amount of drilling mode getting into layers, or like the emission minimization. So basically, in general, what we want is to increase the benefits of the power plant while reducing the impact to the minimum where possible. So we will check all these different topics and areas and just analyze which one represent a bigger problem or not, and how to reduce the impact that they might have. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for this also very interesting presentation, and very relevant presentation for Iceland. Any questions from the audience? If there are no questions, I will start, but the audience, if anyone has a comment or question, type it. Please feel free to raise your hand or just to type in the question into the chat. My first question to you, or actually comment, is I saw that you mentioned the deep drilling project, at least in the references. It was not clear if you're looking into the deep drilling, environmental impacts of the deep drilling, or of a conventional geothermal power plant, like, for example, Svartsengi, that exists already in the Reykjanes area. So you might look into that. For me, both is fine, but the deep drilling project involves a lot more risk, because it's still research and it has not yet been established, at least in a commercial way that you can apply it. So I don't know if you have thought about this. Maybe you want to
yeah, I can actually comment on it. I tend to think, in my opinion, like the drilling fluids are the same, which are used for both drilling for plants and during the Icelandic deep drilling project. In my opinion, they're the same, but maybe I'm wrong, and I will check it out later. So during our
I think it makes your report just more credible if you point this out from the beginning, that you're looking at a normal geothermal plant, for example, similar to Svartsengi, or if you're going to look into something that is currently is actually just simply research, because we don't know yet if this deep drilling technology will be established in the future. Of course, it will be great, because it will increase the power output and increase the lifetime of a borehole by almost an order of magnitude, depending on what report you read. But I think that's important to point out. Also, there's a lot of risk involved with the deep drilling, because there's a lot of unknown about this ongoing research. I think this is important. The second thing I want to point out is also goes a little bit along with the first comment. I would select one location rather than writing about the entire Reykjanes Peninsula, because it simply makes a difference if you are close to a community, a municipality where people are living, or if you're far away in regard to noise emissions into the atmosphere, and in regard to the impact on residential areas. I think it would be just more coherent and more concrete your project if you select one location. The third point is something that comes always up in Iceland if new power plants are being discussed, and it's the use of the energy. I mean, we all know that Iceland has an energy production that is 6 to 7 times higher per capita than the average Western European country, with 17 terawatt or 18 terawatt hours produced per year. So the question is, how is this energy going to be used? I think it's important because it goes a little bit into the strategy, which is also strategic development, which is frequently also a part of an environmental impact assessment. Where do you want to go with the energy planning? You might address this in your report. You can also exclude it, of course, and say that this is outside the system boundary of our project. Along with the previous comments, I think it would be good to look at the synergies that exist in the Reykjanes Peninsula. You have already other geothermal power plants, you have already roads, you have already drilling projects that are ongoing. So you might point out that there's already considerable infrastructure which could be used for your project, rather than going into an area where power lines and roads would have to be constructed. So you can point out that your location is actually a location where a lot of the infrastructure is already available. So you don't go into an area which is pristine and which hasn't been touched upon by simply pointing out that a lot of it has been done or is already constructed, and you can use some of the existing infrastructure. One interesting,
what big parts of the Reykjavik Peninsula are within like the geopark, like Reykjanes Geopark, yes, which is a UNESCO geopark. So like that could be like harder to construct something there.
I agree. Yes, I think that's why it's also important that you. I think it would be nice if you select one specific point or location where that you're going to be looking at, because then you could also address if it is close to the geopark, or if it's at the boundary and it would impact into the geopark, or if it's outside and you don't have to worry about this. Those kind of issues are interesting points of the environmental impact assessment, where you can say, okay, we're completely outside any sensitive areas or any area that has been protected by legislation. So I think this would become more credible if you select one specific location where you can completely outrule any conflicts with potential areas, sensitive areas that have been protected through legislation. One thing I want to also point out, I'm not sure if Einar mentioned this yesterday, but the Reykjanes Peninsula is very porous, and you have sometimes seawater that is leaking in. And you might take a look into this because, for example, Svartsengi runs partially on ocean or salt water. And you might just point this out that what kind of water is used, or how is it, how is the geothermal reservoir that you're extracting the brine from, how this is being regenerated. So this is a little bit outside my area of expertise, but for example, Svartsengi, I know that there's seawater being used, so you might take a look into this. And also, if there are any dangers of impacting on the freshwater reservoirs or reserves. I think there were reports that during dry periods that sometimes the drinking water can get, the seawater can seep into the drinking water. I don't know if this could be affected through the project, but we might take a look into it. Final comment, one last comment. What I would find particularly interesting, if you look at, for example, Svartsenki, there are various different outputs. There's not just electricity produced there, but there's thermal energy, electricity, and then you have the Blue Lagoon, which is a recreational area or a spa. But then you also have carbon recycling, the company that reuses the CO2 from the geothermal power plant to produce biodiesel and methanol. So you might look into it if there's if there are other possibilities to team up with economic incentive or companies that could be kind of spin-offs from your project within the social economic assessment. But of course, you can also say that you would rather focus on other aspects, and then you leave this outside the system boundary of your project. Those are kind of the points I had. Anyone has a comment for this second presentation?
I think Asbjørn had a comment. He had a hand up.
Yeah, it was. Thank you for your presentation. It was actually that what David has already mentioned about the salted water and also that what I feel always very interesting, the supercritical or deep drill project. I put in to the chat link to a website that is very interesting to look at earthquakes, and you can take it into this area and look at earthquakes in Iceland in different times, year for year, in 10 years after in time. It was not more than that.
Thank you, Asbjørn. Thank you.
Thank you, Asbjørn. Okay, thank you very much. I think we're just going to move on to the next presentation, and maybe we can continue with Asbjørn because he would be third in the list. Asbjørn, would you like to present next?
One
yes,
small comment. I really appreciate those who are presenting with the videos on, because that is giving more personal feeling.
Yeah, thank you for that, Stefan. I am in a group, and Joe Baron is going to take the presentation for us.
So then we continue with the group of Drew. Drew, can you share your screen and start the presentation?
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good morning. Our group chose to do an environmental impact of a wind farm in the northeast of Iceland, kind of building off of Thor's research for his master's thesis. So with our 5 W's, the what is a 3.2 megawatt wind farm. The when is looking to be installed in the next 10 to 15 years. The where is in the northeast of Iceland, in the Reykjavik. The who is Laroslav, and the why is clean energy that would be used to produce hydrogen, methanol, or ammonium to store that energy and export it. So the location of the project is in northeast Iceland. It's a 64 square kilometer section of land that could fit 70 wind turbines with a hub height of 80 meters. and this would give the 3.2 megawatts of installed power. So for the breakdown of the allocation of assignments, Laura would be looking at the impact from the wind farm's construction, specifically the land use for the turbines, the construction needed for service roads, and then also looking at the CO2 emissions during the production and construction of the materials and getting the turbines to the proper area. And Babak will be looking at the end of life of the wind farm, so decommissioning, and you look at the European standards for decommissioning wind turbines, look at the effects of the land after decommissioning, and then looking at the CO2 emissions during the decommissioning process that would take place, and then also the uses and what would happen to the actual turbines after their life is over. So maybe either recycling or possible reuse of the fiberglass blades. Lewis will be looking at the legal framework and policies of a wind farm in Iceland. So looking at the regulations from the government as well as some of the laws that govern electricity, and then any other policies for sustainable energy and some of the more local policies. Ashbjorn will be looking at the life cycle analysis of the wind turbines in the wind farm, and then also looking at the energy efficiency from for the electricity that would be produced, specifically looking at local usage of the energy and the grid system, if that would be a way of transmitting the power. And then also looking at the impact of the local farmers that use this area currently for grazing, and the other noise pollution that could affect the farmers and their sheep in this area. I'll be looking at more of the environmental impacts, specifically the plants and wildlife. So the impacts of construction on the vegetation that is there, looking at what plants are already there in the wind farm's footprint, and then looking at some of the ways that this destruction of vegetation could be offset, whether that's with planting in other locations. And then also looking at the effects of the wind turbines on local wildlife. And obviously with wind turbines, usually the focus is on birds. This is especially important since a little to the north is a large bird nesting area of some protected birds. And then also looking at the migration patterns of the bird species in the Northeast that would potentially be flying through the wind farm. And then also just examining some of the other land animals that are found in this area and how they could be affected by a construction of a wind farm. So the methods we would be using is getting data from literature sources. A lot of it would be coming from research that Thor's been doing for his thesis. And then also trying to get some primary sources through interviews. Specifically, the Icelandic Institute of Natural History would hopefully be able to offer us some insight into the geology, the flora, and the fauna of this area. And then also potentially talking to some of the local farmers and citizens. Luckily, our group has 2 Icelandic students, so we potentially have some connections in this area that we could really try and use to our advantage, and get some of the local perspective. And then also, if possible, talking to some government officials for that area, and then surveying tourists to see some of the impacts it would have on tourism if a wind farm were to be constructed in this area. Our expected results are that if we look at the effects of a wind farm, we think there would be a positive outcome of the EIA due to the fact that the electricity generated by wind does not produce harmful emissions to the environment and is considered to be a green technology that is usually pretty friendly with the environment. With that, that wraps up our presentation. Thank you for listening, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for this a very important project, also very relevant for Iceland regarding the wind farm in northeastern Iceland. Any question from the audience? I see already one question, 3.2 megawatt, that would be just one big turbine. Do you know how many windmills will be set up and what the total capacity of the wind farm would be?
Should I answer this?
Yeah.
As Drew mentioned, it is 70 windmills that is planned there, and the total capacity of is 224 megawatts.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So this was just, yeah, I think that's important that you kind of really outline the number of windmills, how big they are, the diameters, what type of they are, and so on. This could be, of course, elaborated for the final presentation. I don't see any other questions, so I will just right away start. My first comment to you is, and you mentioned it at the beginning, that your project is mainly power to X. Power to X means that you have electricity and then you produce methanol, methane, hydrogen, whatever synthetic energy porter, where you, which then you can sell as biofuels or at least carbon neutral or low carbon energy sources. And I think that's an important point, because if you want to have a power to X project, then you would have to include in the life cycle analysis also the production of hydrogen, methanol or ethanol or whatever end product you're going to produce. If you're right only about the wind park and then you have an electricity output, then I think it's important that you might include a chapter how the energy is going to be used. Also, if there are power lines to connect to the grid, and to put it a bit in context of the development in northeastern Iceland, where maybe the energy usage is a bit lower than in the capital area. And so this is something which was, to me, not very clear. You might comment on this topic?
Regarding the usage of the energy, as the energy grid is not very good at this area, and I was on a meeting with at Orkustofnun, the energy agency here in Iceland, 2014. At that time, KATHRYN was Minister of Energy Issues, and she mentioned it especially that it was just like an island, the northeast corner of the land that have to be strengthened in regarding energy. And since then I have not heard so much about that, but by putting on a windmill park there, it would be an opportunity to put a transmission line there up, and by that make the grid more better in this area. You mentioned also, yeah, and by that, it could be, we could also think about local use of the energy and the loss comparing to that, because also, of course, we have not 100% efficiency in such garden. I think it is about 50% or something like that, and by converting it to another, it will also be loss there of energy. So there's a lot of such things that we have to include. You mentioned also I can't remember what it is.
Power to X, like methanol production or
yes,
hydrogen production. Where
yeah, no,
you could do this locally, then you would not need power lines. If you do it locally, the hydrogen, and you might then have other ways of exporting the energy.
Yeah, yeah. But we would have to consider in the LCA assessment the end use of that energy, or could it be the end project in the analysis?
Yes, so this was that was my point. It was not clear to me if you're looking at an LCA or an environmental impact assessment of where the final product is hydrogen, methanol, or ethanol, or something else, or if you're looking at a wind farm that produces electricity. And both is fine with me. I think you should just clearly state your system boundary. And in case it's a wind farm, I think it would be valuable if the person who looks more at the I don't know exactly how you split it up, but maybe you could have a chapter on it, how the energy is being used. And if it's electricity, then it would of course involve probably a construction of power lines. You could of course say that you exclude this from your project, that this is outside the system boundary. But I think that's kind of important to state what is within your project and what is outside.
It's a very good point.
Yes. One last, maybe one point I also had, because you chose, I wasn't aware of the wind farm wind farm project in the Northeast, so you might point out the suitability of this location by looking at Weatherstoffen has a wind atlas where the statistics of wind conditions are listed, and you might point out if this is a particularly efficient or particularly a good location for wind farms, because maybe you have these adiabatic falling winds coming from the glacier, or maybe it's just a location where you have very consistent wind statistics. You might point this out to promote that this is a particular region where you can have a good efficiency for a wind farm. Because at the same time, what I also noted is what in Iceland always comes up, the value of the wilderness. And there are people that are promoting that Iceland should be a big national park, and that the wilderness should be preserved. And so I think this is kind of what you can point out in your report, that the region is specifically good for a wind park. That is why it could be used for a wind farm, and it's worthwhile to giving up some of this pristine wilderness, which of course has also a value for the society. So these are more or less my points. I think we will move on to the next presentation. And if we have specific questions, then we can of course discuss it maybe after the class.
Well, just one thing, you mentioned the size of the windmills. I think we have that. I have those informations. And another thing about the placement, I don't know if you have heard about speculation about putting a big harbor in Finnafjörður, which is south of or southeast of this area. And that is one of because there is no infrastructure there to export like hydrogen or energy in other form. That hang a little bit with this idea to build up a big harbor there in beside this area.
I think if you mention this in your report, your report becomes more credible, because then the reader sees immediately, okay, you're building a wind farm all the way in the northeast, and there's also the idea of building a harbor where hydrogen or something can be exported, and there's also a need for further electricity. It would make your report more complete. You don't need to write a long analysis about it, but you could mention it in the motivational part of your report that these plans exist.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We will move on to the next presentation on my list. If I just go down the Babak presented already, and then we have Chloe. Chloe, are you on? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
And I'm with Stefan, who will do the presentation.
Oh, yes, okay. Stefan, we had already, then we just
move
down the Corey, I think presented also already. Drew presented. Ikit, hope I present.
Sorry, it's
Stefan will present for me.
Oh, okay, sorry, okay. Okay, so
we haven't presented.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Stefan. Okay, so we have the fourth project.
Greetings here from Helsinki. We have a group with Chloe, Egil, me, myself, Teemu, and Orvar, and we stumbled upon a project which is called Vaxa, which is a quite new company which does vertical farming in Reykjavik. And we're going to do an environmental impact assessment of their vertical farming. Let's see here. So, as I said, Vaxa is a vertical greenhouse stationed in the capital area of Iceland. Started as an idea in 2016, and their production is started in 2018, but they're not really up to full capacity yet. So it's quite sort of a new company. And the idea of the vertical farming, which is somewhat of a growing trend around the world, is of course, you have the benefits of lower land mass use, you have more efficient nutrient use, and also a more sort of circular use of the biochemical cycle, so that you can actually, you don't have the same types of nutrient runoffs that you have in conventional farming. So our main assessment tool is going to be the life cycle assessment, and our sort of boundaries is going to be from planting to consumer. So starting off in their facilities, when they plant the seeds, grow them, pack them, and deliver them to the consumer. So we're leaving actually the produce itself. So the grave phase is going to be omitted from this life cycle assessment. In this life cycle assessment, we're going to concentrate on the greenhouse gas emissions, probably going to do them in CO2 equivalent. We're going to look at ocean acidification and soil degradation. Functional units are probably going to be impact per calorie produced. As we all know, leafy greens, which, sorry, I'm forgot to mention, the main bulk of their production are sort of leafy greens. So we have lettuce, herbs, which have good sort of nutritional value regarding vitamins and minerals, but are quite low in calories. So we're also going to see if it's more appropriate to do impact per kilogram of food produced. And to get some reference, we're going to use what you can find in local supermarkets, or as a consumer in Reykjavik, what else you can use. You can either use imported produce or then conventionally or greenhouse produced and locally, which I understood isn't quite sort of so massive, the production. We have here some of the tasks slash a fact sheet, what we need to do. So we have, you can read here, I'm not going to go through them all, but sort of in a nutshell, we're going to see at the process of the growing of the produce. So we're going to look at the inputs, which go into the process, and then look at the outputs. So what kind of fertilizers or nutrient solutions are they using? How much power are they using? What is the source of the power of the energy? Heating, packaging material when going out, what kind of wastewater is there any sort of residual nutrients in the wastewater, or are they recycling everything? Does the factory itself have greenhouse gas emissions? Then for the socioeconomic aspect, we're going to look at the workforce, both for the overhead and of the construction, and then of course land mass for the building itself. This is, we're not going to do sort of like a classic divide of the workload of the spheres. We're more going to concentrate on sort of the scientific paper or the assessment areas. So we are going to start off with an area and subject overview. This is more to introduce the reader of what the current situation is. What is the local production? What is the amount of imported? Who are the possible customers? Local agriculture. Then we're going to look at the LCA of the production itself. We're going to do vertical versus conventional, yield versus emissions, as I already said. Then to get, we're also going to do a life cycle assessment of the construction itself. And this is more to see that what is their beginning carbon investment or their carbon deficit, and see what is the benefit of using their produce, and when is sort of almost like a return on investment. So when is the initial impact of greenhouse gases, when is it paid off by the benefit of using their produce? And then we're also going to look on the infrastructure, see how we allocate what goes into the production and what is the construction, for example, the LED lights and then we're also going to see if we can do some kind of weighted or impact matrix, depending on what we find, what kind of information we find. For example, a Leopold matrix. And this is more to see like if the life cycle assessment is more sort of just scientific, looking what goes into the process that one comes out. Then we want with the impact matrix, we want to more go sort of a local, sort of the geographic, the actual building and what it does for the actual environment where it is. And then the socioeconomic impact, where we're going to go a little bit through the resilience, social awareness of different sort of farming models and work, job creation. And with this, hopefully we're going to get a pretty decent sort of overview. So for the information gathering, we've already been in contact with the company itself, and they were really enthusiastic. Actually, they, if I remember correctly, what Egil, who was talking with them, they said that they had planned on doing a life cycle assessment, but haven't. So they were pretty happy in helping us, and this was probably also help us so that we get sort of as accurate information as possible and verified information. Then, of course, we're also gonna have to gather information on other types of growing greens. we're going to use, for example, EcoInvent to try and get a good overview of what, for example, imported produce, how they impact, and then, for example, locally greenhouse produced produce. And then we're going to compare them. And then also, of course, with the social and the area overview, we're going to have to go with sort of research. We also planned, time willing, that we would do a survey with the possible consumers. As I said, this company is already up and running, but just to get sort of a indication that there is a market and a demand for this, so that we could, for example, they sell both to restaurants, and then they have like sort of a monthly prescription where you can get was it once a week, twice a month, or once a month, where you get a box of fresh greens delivered to home. But now I understand that a lot of the restaurants are either closed down temporary or permanently due to COVID-19 restrictions. So we're probably not going to get enough big sample size in the survey to get any definite answers. But this also probably shows a little bit about the resilience of the company, that if there's no demand for their product, do they have something else which they can do, or are they then just standing in a warehouse full of greens that nobody wants? And the expected results. So a good overview of the CO2 footprint of Voxa, because this is probably something that the consumer is most familiar with, is the CO2 footprint. So I think just for the general public, it's something that is probably easiest identifiable. Clear view of benefits of the vertical farming versus regular farming. There have been studies that say that vertical farming are beneficial and more sustainable, but just we want to get Voxas with their methods to see the clear benefits. And this was the thing that I was talking about. Sort of, we have the graph here where you have the initial carbon deficit. So let's say the construction puts in X amounts of tons of carbon dioxide, and then you start your production, and slowly you up your production, and you can prove that while buying your produce, you are lowering the carbon footprint, for example, of the regular Icelandic consumer or food production in general. And then when you go up with your production, you start decreasing it. So at what time have you sort of mitigated your initial carbon footprint? And that was that for us.
Okay, thank you very much. Also a very interesting project and very important, also very relevant for Iceland, very important for Iceland. So any questions from the audience? I don't see any questions, so I will just start. Maybe questions are going to come up while I'm talking. I think my main question to you is, what kind of products, what kind of greens is Voxa producing? I think that's quite important, because this, if you were to focus, for example, on tomato, and then you can compare the carbon footprint and the environmental impacts with other conventional greenhouses in Iceland, and then it could be interesting if this vertical production is more efficient than, for example, any farmstead that has a greenhouse in Iceland, and to compare it. Maybe you want to comment quickly?
Yeah, that's actually going to be our main angle, that we're going to see the different types of production. We haven't had gotten the entire profile of what they're growing, but initially it looks like they're only doing leafy greens. So that means lettuce and herbs, and they are quite sort of high end. So it's for restaurants, for decoration, which means that probably lettuce, which is also something which is very familiar for the consumer. So probably lettuce is going to be sort of our benchmark. So we do their lettuce, and then we do the imported lettuce, and then we do the locally greenhouse produced lettuce.
Yes. I think that's very relevant because this brings me to the functional unit. I think your functional unit is calories per, no, impacts per calories
or impact
food
per
produced.
food produced.
Food produced, and so and if it's mass food produced, or if it's calories of food produced, and this of course changes the impact quite drastically. So you might, and it's also a question of quality of the food. So you might just point this out quite in detail. I think the methods, I think they're pretty good, very well structured. I like the way you set up, you're going to use the different methods. On Monday, we will have a lecture on LCA. And so you might get in contact with the presenter on Monday to get some feedback on how to use EcoInvent.
Yeah, I was looking at it, and they're quite sort of heavy and scientific, the report. So just, you know, get a maybe sort of helping hand on how to sort of interpret them would be really great.
Yes. So again, if you don't, maybe within the 2 weeks that you have, it's not possible to get access to EcoInvent and collect all the data. So you might have to limit yourself to those reports that exist. We had in previous years, for example, the CO2 footprint of tomato production in Iceland. And I can send you that report from the previous year, so you can compare it already what other students did before. Yes, but again, this leads me back to the type of food produced within the vertical Vaxa greenhouse. I think it would be also interesting to see a bit how their facilities look like, how much space do they use up, simply so that you can compare how much land they're using compared to a conventional greenhouse, which is not vertical, where land use is probably going to be a lot more per unit food produced. I have two more points I noted here. One point is the location of this vertical greenhouse. If it's located close to a geothermal power plant, for example, there is a company that is producing food-based protein with vertical walls with algae production. Alga Nova, I think is the name of the company. It's close to Headless Haiti, and they're using the CO2 stream in order to fertilize their algae cultures. And maybe this could be an option for Vaxa. I don't know exactly where they're located, but you might look into that.
They actually had, if I saw correctly, they have also sort of, it's probably like a sister company, which is more into sort of supplements. They do sort of microalgae derived omega fatty acids.
Exactly, yes.
But we've thought of just, you know, sort of like keeping the scope down so that we're going now with the sort of edible greens, and probably not doing the other, because it's probably another process with bioreactors and so on.
That's totally fine. Yeah, I think that's great. And just the only thing I wanted to point out, if they're located close to a power plant, they might use also the CO2 stream to, first of all, to assimilate some of the CO2 that would be emitted into the atmosphere, and secondly, also to fertilize and make the growth, improve the growth of the plants. Very last thing, if you do a survey, you might look at the price flexibility. How flexible is the price? How are consumers going to react to something that is produced in Iceland that might have a slightly higher price than if you go to Costco or to a big retail store where you can maybe buy very cheaper. But yeah, just to look at the price flexibility of the final product.
Yeah.
I think there's no question. I would like to make a break for 10 minutes. Let's be back at 12:45. Yes?
I was just wondering about the lighting. Have you have you think about using LED lighting that you could control the wave, the space in waves that you could use in this project?
If I understand, they are using LEDs just exactly to tone in the wavelength. And if I remember correctly, the more the LED technology goes forward, it takes down the cost and the energy consumption of these kinds of cultivations. But if I remember correctly, they are using LEDs right now.
Okay, very good. I think we're going to make a 10-minute break until 12:45. Please be back at 12:45. Those who still have to present a project, please send me a short mail with who the presenter is so that we can make a list for the remaining projects. Please send me also a list of who is in your project so that we can arrange the remaining presentations for this morning. So let's meet back at 12:45 and then with the remaining presentations. See you right away. Okay, I think we can continue. It is 11:45, so we will just continue with the next presentation. And I would like to maybe start with the next presentation with Noelle Fischer and her team. Noelle, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so then please, the screen is yours. Please share your presentation and then present your project.
Share screen. This one. Okay. There we go. Okay. So we will be presenting, I'm Noelle, this is Lorenzo. We'll be presenting our presentation today for our group on the environmental impact of the COVID pandemic. Possibly. There we go. Okay, so our W's. So first off, our what is to analyze the main consequences that the pandemic has had in the environment. Our who and our where is Iceland. We felt that it would be a good place to start. And then our why, because it's relevant to today. We're still also in it as well. So it's going to be interesting to see what we've currently, or the data that we are looking at. It's going to be interesting to see because it's really relevant. It's like it just happened. I mean, we're still in it. So we're going to be seeing more and more, like, I guess the nitty gritty of what we're currently in right now, environmental wise. And then we're looking, our time scale is from February till about now-ish, most likely until October, because a lot of things were recently published in October, considering that it's still November, not the end of the month. So that is currently our what, who, where, and why, and when. So the scope of the project, as we can see, there are 3 prongs of our project. Each prong is going to be divided up to 1 person each in our group. So first is that we're going to be looking at the energy usage per sector and seeing how that has changed as we'll talk about more in expected results. But we definitely plan to see how the residential areas of energy usage have probably gone up a lot more versus the industrial, which have gone down. We also plan to do an air travel comparison of freight and passenger as well. So this will be seen as how many flights are in and out and their possible carbon emissions. And then we'll be looking at the disposal of personal protective equipment, such as the masks, the gloves, and the wipes. So that'll be about like the waste there and whether or not like single-use plastics. And then the next will be car emissions, since because of the stay-at-home order, not people are driving out as much anymore. So we're going to be seeing and looking into our emissions there. And then we'll be looking at the consumption of goods. So here, we plan to look at how, like which goods people are still buying and which goods have gone up or down as in consumption. And lastly, tourism, because that is still a very vital part of the economy here. So we'll be looking at how tourism has affected the environment as well.
So the methods we're going to use, like for the energy usage, air travel comparison, and tourism, our main method is going to be literature study. Like we're trying to see published articles that's like have been looking into these issues or subjects. For the consumption of goods and the car emissions, we're planning to do a survey, like see if Icelandic people or people who live in Iceland have felt a difference between their like previous routines and schedules, and now that the pandemic has hit. For the personal protection equipment, we're planning to do a life cycle assessment, but mainly focusing on the end of life of the product, like after its functional life has ended. We're also planning to contact the Environmental Agency of Iceland, that one. Yeah, our main objective is to give a standardized numerical value to each of these issues and to give it a holistic approach and reach one conclusion, like percentage words. So our outlook of prospective results right now are, we're assuming we're going to have lower values in air travel, car emissions, tourism, and due to the closing of the borders in like most countries, and Iceland as well. And consumption and disposal of PPE, of personal protection equipment, we're not sure, like maybe there's been some changes in routine between the home office and the homeschooling of the kids. Well, like kids in school that are staying home, so maybe that increases or reduces the usage of products. And in energy, we're looking into an increase in demand of domestic and a decrease in industrial and commercial values of energy usage. Yes, so I don't know if by now anybody has some questions.
Okay, thank you very much. If there are any questions, please just unmute yourself and ask your questions. Otherwise, I will start with my comments and questions at the same time. I think it's a very important project and very interesting project because it will actually show by individual how when individuals have to restrict themselves to a drastically different lifestyle like this pandemic has imposed on us, how will this affect the total impact of a nation? That's more or less what you want to look at. My first point is that I think it's a very difficult topic because many of the data are very new and it might be difficult to get all the data if you focus on whole Iceland. So to make it more tangible, maybe you could think of restricting yourself to a smaller unit. Could be, for example, Reykjavik University, could be a student house, could be exchange students, simply because I'm a bit concerned. I don't know, maybe you have looked into this, but if you want to get data from the industry, from the commercial sector in Iceland about the last 10 months, you might get difficulties to collecting relevant data. And if you can't get tangible data or data that is that has been collected by the companies, you might run into something where you have to do a lot of estimations, and maybe your report becomes more valuable and more convincing if you focus on maybe Reykjavik University, or maybe the students that do exchange, the exchange student at Reykjavik University, or maybe a store close by, or somehow a more specific target. That's one of my comments. I was also thinking of, I think you mentioned pretty much all the impacts that come to my mind. One comment I would like to think that we could include, or at least think of including, is like events, like, open airs or concerts that have been canceled, that might also reduce the impact, reduce at least the emissions. You might think of that. And I think what I also think is very important within this project, that we do a survey to kind of assess how people perceive this, and how much did the behavior change? Did people really travel less with cars, or did car traffic increase because you're more skeptical about using public transport? It would be an interesting question that you could assess within your project. Yeah, it's a little bit different project than all the other ones because you choose a pandemic, which is not a human project, but I think it's a very important project because it would reveal very interesting results in regard to how the pandemic has reduced impacts, or maybe also increased impacts. It's actually not quite sure. There have been reports that the carbon emissions due to the pandemic have not significantly dropped worldwide. So you might look also at these researchers that have already looked into the global carbon emissions for 2020. Yeah, so this is more or less my feedback to you. Again, I think it would be good to set your system boundary clearly, that you're going to focus on maybe one specific sector in Iceland, or even one specific school or so, simply because it might be easier for you to get enough relevant information.
I have a comment or question. So one thing that I've been curious about, purely more from an economic perspective, but I'm not sure if it fits with the parameters of your project, but there was a period during this pandemic where the infection rate was quite low and we were quite open within the country, but tourism and travel hadn't yet been opened. And so it seemed like there was a lot of internal domestic tourism or life. And then it was, once the virus was reintroduced, mainly through tourists, I believe, then it shut down again. So I'd be curious to see if that could fit into your analysis at all, just the whether or not having like the governmental restrictions and its impact on domestic versus international life here in Iceland.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, we'll look into.
Yeah, good comment. Any other comments? Yeah, I think otherwise, if questions come up, or if you would like to discuss it, feel free to write me a mail, and then we can discuss it maybe after class, or during the next week, or during the next days. I think we're going to pass on to the next presentation, which is by Nina. Nina, can you hear us?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
I'm going to share my screen, but everybody says something out of my group.
Okay, very good.
I hope you all can see my screen. Perfect. Then hi and welcome to our presentation. We wanted to present you our EIA project, which is about the environmental impact of the veganuary compared to a vegetarian and an omnivore month in the UK. Our group consists of Oriane, Soleil, Theophile, Tula, Tia, and me, Nina. The Veganuary is a non-profit organization that encourages people from all over the world to try out the vegan diet for 1 month in January. During this Veganuary, they provide you with a lot of plant-based recipes, nutrition tips, and more information. And since 2014, Veganuary has inspired and supported more than 1 million people in 192 countries. The main reasons for participating were health with 38%, 37% say that it's animals, 18% find the environment the most important reason, and 7%. In our project, we want to look at the environmental impact of one person participating in this Veganuary compared to a vegetarian and an omnivore diet.
So we will be doing this project about the different diets in United Kingdom, and we decided that we take the United Kingdom as our because it's representative of many countries in Europe, so the diets are pretty much the same, so we can get like a pretty good perspective on different diets. And also there is a lot of data about the dietary habits available, so that is good for the research. And also UK is very vegetarian and vegan friendly, and they have been launching a lot of vegan products, and in 2018 they launched more vegan products than any other nation, so that is also a good place to start because of that point.
Yes, as we said, we will look at the environmental and social impact of veganuary, and that is how being vegan for 1 month affects the soil, land, air, water, ecosystem, and us humans. So therefore we will divide our report, like many others, into 6 sub-chapters: lithosphere, hydrosphere, biosphere, atmosphere, anthroposphere, and praxis, and that's where we'll dig deeper into those topics.
We quickly want to present ourselves and say what kind of subchapter we chose. For me, I'm Nina, and I'm an exchange student from Germany here at the Reykjavik University. I'm currently in my master's studies for sustainable energy engineering, and I'll take a look at the biosphere. So basically the impact on the animals in the ecosystem, as well as the loss of biodiversity linked to animal agriculture.
Hi, I am Tiia Westerberg, and I am from Finland, Metropolia. And at the moment, I study my 3rd year in energy and environmental technology. And I will look, my subchapter is lithosphere, and I will look more into the soil degradation and erosion caused by agriculture.
My name is Sóley, and I'm finishing my bachelor degree in mechatronics engineering in Reykjavik University. And I will be researching the effect our subject has on the atmosphere, like emissions from the food production, electricity used, and transportation.
So I'm Ariane. I'm an exchange student from France at Reykjavik University, and I am in my last year of my general engineering school, and my subchapter is Anthroposphere, and I'm looking for the impact of the human health.
Hi, my name is Tuula Koskenpää, and I'm studying from Finland, the Metropolia. And right now I'm on my 3rd year studying environmental technology, and my subchapter is Hydrosphere. So I'll be looking more at the water usage, both in plants and animals. So about the diets, and then I'm also looking at the pollutions that are caused by the growing food to the earth and to the waters, and yeah.
And finally, I'm Théophile. I'm coming from France. I'm studying general engineering. And for this project, I will be focused on praxis. So the quantitative average and stuff like that in the UK about the vegan and vegetarian diet.
So to do this project, we will be focused on 2 different methods. We will work with some literature research, previous surveys, and we would like to create new surveys And we will resume all results of each section in a matrix. And we will like to use and create a causal diagram.
Then about the outlook. Based on the average consumption of these three diets in comparison to each other, we are expecting that the vegan diet has the least impact to the environment and the different spheres. Vegetarian comes in second, and lastly the omnivore diet, which in this case is expected to have the most significant impacts overall. Also, we are expecting that the environmental impact of the vegan diet will be higher than thought.
This is our sources for the moment. So we get a study from Oxford University about the impact of the different diets in 2018. And a second one is from the Basel University in Switzerland about the soil degradation for the different diets. We'll upload our sources during the project management, and yeah, that's it for the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for this also very important project on vegan diet versus omnivore diet. Any questions from the audience? Comments from the audience? Okay, I think Orion and I have discussed this already yesterday. My main comment to your presentation is I think it's a good project. It's a very important project, and a group of students has already done a similar project a few years back. And what we found out the last time a group of students did this is that we had to somehow it was helpful to define somehow the functional unit, because you're going to compare three different alimentary lifestyles, and if you compare it, you want to make sure that you have that you compare a similar quality of lifestyle. What I want to say is, like, of course, you can take you can eat a meal that is composed of fast food that you eat very quickly, and then you can have on the other side a 6-menu meal that is vegan and that has been that has a lot of different products in it, and then of course the impact might not be very comparable, because on the one side you have a full meal with a different types of products, and on the other side you have like one compact, condensed a package that contains the same amount of energy. So this is, I think, it should somehow, you might have to look into it. I saw in your presentation that you're going to look at 1 month for the entire kingdom. If you get relevant information, that's fine with me. If it turns out to be a bit difficult to assess, for example, the water footprint or the energy footprint or the emissions into the atmosphere, you might think of that you kind of specify a certain community or a certain group of people, or become more specific. Currently, you're saying the whole United Kingdom, which is of course a huge population of, I think it's 16 or 17 million people. So
yeah, we want to take a look at one person, like what kind of impact one person would have being in the veganuary compared to the other different diets, but more specific, like a person that is like has the same dietary habits as in the UK are an average.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that would already make a little bit more sense if you take an average UK citizen. that might eat in the cantina at work, and there you have 2 meals, because it makes a difference if the person like, you know, orders pizza or goes to a fancy restaurant and has a big dinner. That also impacts the impact, or affects the impact. So you want to try to compare similar lifestyles with similar lifestyles, and that would be a bit easier if you take a person that has, you know, if you compare a person that has a lifestyle that goes to, I don't know, a restaurant and eats his meal there, or cooks himself, or buys a fast food product, because simply it has to be at the end comparable if you compare the different lifestyles, especially afterwards if you have an impact on the hydrosphere, lithosphere, atmosphere, and the praxis. One aspect I mentioned already yesterday regarding the praxis is a bit the social acceptance. And as you showed already in your expectations, or at the beginning, in principle, there are health benefits, there are environmental benefits, and there are, of course, ethical benefits, because you don't have to kill a living animal. So you might look into this. How acceptable is this for in the praxis? Because you will find people that have very strong opinions about eating meat, and for them it's a tradition and cultural important aspect of their lifestyle. So you might address this as well, that that there are some very important aspects regarding the tradition and the habit of eating meat. But I think my most important point is that you limit your system to a specific case so that it becomes comparable, so that you don't compare 2 completely different lifestyles like I was mentioning before. I think that's more or less what I have to comment so far. Maybe we can discuss it once you go ahead with your project, and you come up with a specific question, then we can meet up again and discuss it more in detail.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the feedback. Helped a lot.
No problem. Any questions from the audience or comments?
No, but
I think there's a question in the chat.
Yes.
About why it's the January. I think the reason for that is just because all the people, or a lot of people, have like New Year's resolutions, and it's a good thing to start on the 1st of January to meet the New Year's resolutions. But of course, everybody can sign up for the Veganuary at any time of the year. It's just like the most people do it in January, as well as all the restaurants that participate in the January as well.
Also, I think that if we would do it like on the summertime, when there is a lot of vegetables coming from near, that would like have an effect on the like what are the results, because on the winter time there is bigger footprint on those as like vegetables as well. So yeah, maybe it would be better to have the month going on in January, but it's not as comparable as some month where also vegans need more like imported stuff.
I also think that people in the UK are more open for it because they have like really bad meat, right?
Yeah, I mean, this could, of course, also be an interesting aspect that you could take into account, that if the people are eating, you know, organic meat or industrial meat, which makes a big difference, or organic vegetables or vegetables that are shipped from around the world, exotic products. So you might kind of differentiate a little bit on the quality of the food as well, just to make sure that you kind of compare a similar quality within the comparison of the three eating habits.
Yeah, we were thinking about doing that as well. So about the comparing like near made food and lots of imported food, but we decided that it's going to be like too wide for our like time zone to have everything compared. So we needed to limit to taste three, so it's vegan and vegetarian and omnivore. So couldn't do everything.
Yes. So this relates a bit to my first comment, where I said, you know, if you take a specific restaurant, for example, and you compare meat and vegan meat menu, because then it's the same quality. The restaurant might get from similar sources the vegetables and the meat, and then you know, then you can. If a reader then reads your report and says, look, I'm buying my meat from the local farmer next door, and the sheep are running around the whole summer in the highlands, and they're completely organic, and you know, you can address this concern that you have the same quality of food, and also in terms of I mean, vegan food can be very tasty if you prepare it nicely. It's not just a meat meal without the meat. So you might, you know, address this, that you have a similar qualitative menu that you're comparing. I would just somehow think this through. I don't have a exact answer how to do this. It's a bit the challenge that we will have to think of during the next 2 weeks. But I think it's an important aspect to think of, simply because it would make your report more convincing if you address the quality of the two meals within your report.
Yeah, that's why we want to take a look at, like, do some research on what the average vegan person, the average omnivore person, and the average vegetarian person in the UK like typically eats in a day, so that we can like make it comparable.
Okay. Okay. I think is there another presentation? Did I miss one presentation, or I think otherwise everybody has presented something. Okay, if there's otherwise, I mean, let's try to stay in touch. So if you run into troubles finding data, or if you have questions regarding my comments, or if you would like to discuss a specific aspect of your project, feel free to write me a mail, and we can set up a Zoom meeting and discuss it again. Otherwise, I would like to thank you all for the very exciting projects. I look forward to hearing about your final presentation and also reading your final report. Yeah, so if you have questions regarding the final report, also just write me a mail and I'll try to answer you. Otherwise, I would like to thank you for the presentation and wish you a nice weekend. And we would meet Monday morning for the LCA lecture. And yeah, thank you very much for the presentations. You were great. Thank you. Yeah, the abstract, please send them directly to Yang Shu. He will collect them and then we will grade them. And you will get, of course, feedback. Again, the abstract, the most important thing is that you do the referencing correct. We'll give you feedback on the referencing and the figures and the table, because that's important that you incorporate those feedbacks into the final report. yeah, so this is more or less it for today. Thank you very much. Have a nice weekend.
David,
Bye-bye.
David,
Yes.
Kai said that we return our individual assignments to him. So what about like a feedback on this first individual assignment and the reference use? How do we do? I mean, Kai told us that we can return our individual assignments to him. Does he then tell you or show Shu Yang what we have done, or how do we work?
I think Kai will do the grading for all the students from Finland himself. I will discuss with Kai what I'm usually doing. I think also the students from, since you're in a group team, you will get the same grade for the group project. I will simply discuss it with Kai. I cannot really answer you how Kai, I think you will have to send your abstract to Kai directly. The 5 students from Metropolia University would have to send the abstract directly to Kai, because he's taking care of the grading at Metropolia University. Or you would have to contact him directly how he wants to do this, because I don't know exactly.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because we also write the final report, of course, and it's important that we use references correctly. So
Yes.
The feedback part was my main question here.
I'm going to discuss it with Kai, but for the moment, just send Kai your abstract, and then we will figure somehow out for sure, since I think all Finnish students are working together with students from Reykjavik University. So other students from Reykjavik University will get feedback on their abstract, but we will, with Kai, we will find a solution so that you can get similar feedback.
Okay,
But
thank you.
For the moment, just send it to Kai. Okay, any further questions? Okay, thank you very much. Have a nice weekend. We see us on Monday. Looking forward to seeing you on Monday again, and enjoy the weekend. Bye-bye.